Hand sanitizer for local community organizations that do really important work, like the Canada Food Bank, Shepherds of Good Hope, and Chrysalis House. To keep up with the growing demand for hand sanitizer, food, and beer, Big Rig used the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to hire back almost all their members of staff. And to save money on rent, they also used the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. Big Rig is one of the thousands of companies across the country stepping up to help their workers and their community during this tough time. Programs like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance are there to help them get back on their feet. We also launched the Canada Emergency Business Account to help small businesses get a loan to bridge to better times. And we recently expanded the eligibility for this program to include even more small businesses like farmers. As of today, this expanded CEBA will be available through the major banks. We're actively working with other lenders, including credit unions, to make sure small businesses have access to the help they need. As we move into the summer, Canadians can keep counting on our support.
As we enter a new stage of the crisis, all levels of government are working together to ensure that Canadians can return to work safely. Last evening, the Premiers and the Deputy Prime Minister and myself held our 15th weekly call. We talked about our government's proposal to provide $14 billion to meet the most urgent needs over the coming months. This is money that could be used to ensure the safety of children in childcare centres, expedite contact tracing, and buy more personal protective equipment. As we start to reopen the economy, we must ensure that Canadians have everything they need to protect their health and that of their family. The Premiers and myself also talked about restrictions at the border and the need to be cautious as the summer begins. COVID-19 still is a threat to our health, and that's why our government will continue to work closely with the provinces and territories to support people during this difficult time. I'd now like to update Canadians on the presence of our Canadian Armed Forces in Quebec and Ontario.
I want to take a moment to thank our Canadian forces for stepping up once again in our time of need. Since April, our women and men in uniform have done great work to help stabilize the situation in long-term care facilities. As of today, our members remain active in one facility in Ontario, and we anticipate that they'll be ready to leave in the coming days once the situation is stable. In Quebec,
our CAF members have done a remarkable job since arriving on the ground on April 20th. Our troops helped to stabilize the situation in a total of 47 residences, and I want to take a moment to thank them for their support. But our members have not completed their mission. They will be stabilizing another 4 residences in the coming days. Overall, the situation in long-term care facilities has greatly improved. The needs are not the same as they were 2 months ago, and that's why, in recent weeks, we have been working with Quebec to develop a transition plan that will allow us to transfer the current operations from military personnel to civilian personnel. And today, we can announce that the Canadian Red Cross will be stepping up to provide support until September 15th. A few weeks ago, our government provided $100 million to the Red Cross, which will allow them to provide 900 people who are prepared to work in these facilities. A first unit of 150 individuals will be deployed between now and July 6th, and an additional 750 people will start work before July 29th. The arrival of the Red Cross will allow our armed forces to return to their usual duties and be ready for any eventuality. Between now and September 15th, we will still maintain teams that can intervene quickly in case of emergency. Canadians can always count on our support.
I'd like to end today by recognizing that this is a weekend when many of us would be heading to a Pride celebration. Pride is a chance to celebrate who we are and take stock not only of how far we've come as a society, but how far we still have to go. Because there's still so much more work to be done to ensure greater rights, protections, and inclusion for all LGBTQ2 people. I know that many of you are disappointed that you can't get together this year, but I hope that you still all get to celebrate in your own way. And to the kids out there who are worried about not being accepted for who they are, I want you to know that we're here for you, we support you, and that we will always stand by you. To
the young people listening today and who are afraid they won't be accepted for who they are, we are here, we support you, and we will always be there for you.
Merci.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to the phone for questions. Just one question and one follow-up. Over to you, Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Michel Lamarche, TVA. À vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. First of all, I'd like you to comment on the $14 billion. For several weeks now, there have been discussions happening with the provinces. You seem to repeat the same sentence over and over, and it doesn't look like there's any progress. Are they more inclined to accept your offer of $14 billion based on the conditions you've laid out? Well, we've shown a great deal of flexibility, and in our discussions that we had this week, that were done as a group but also bilaterally, the provinces did understand that there is a huge amount of flexibility in what we are proposing. At the same time, we do expect that federal money that we're giving to the provinces be invested in those things that will help to reopen the economy. Things such as more spots in childcare centres, more personal protective equipment, support for municipalities. So I can say that those negotiations are continuing, and we hope to be able to flow that money very soon. Follow up, Michel? Yes, of course. Yesterday, you talked about the situation in long-term care facilities, saying it was a failure on the part of the provinces. How did the premiers respond? Do they agree with your analysis? And can you give us guarantees that during the transition there will not be any lack of personnel in these homes? Well, I have said that as a country we must do much better for our seniors. Yesterday I was responding to concerns about personnel and vulnerable people, but everyone agrees that we have lessons to learn from this situation and that we must improve the way we care for seniors in this country, and we will all be working together on that. Regarding the transition, what we saw in the last 2 months through the extraordinary efforts made by CAF members is that many of the situations in these seniors' homes that were out of control have now been stabilized. The personnel has returned to work, procedures have been put in place to properly protect seniors, and as these centers go from a red alert to a green situation, we will be able to progress to other centers that need help. So no military personnel will leave a center that has not reached the green stage. I can assure you of that. We will also be bringing in Red Cross staff to continue to do the work that our military people were doing. That will be done gradually in order to ensure that no one finds him or herself in a difficult situation.
Obviously, we talked about the fact that we need to work together to do better, all levels of government in the future on supporting our seniors. We've continued to highlight there are challenges around personnel, there are challenges around structures, and we're going to keep working together. In regards to the military stepping back and allowing the Canadian Red Cross to move into the elder care centres in Quebec, we're making sure that the work that has been done over the past few months, that is moving situations from crisis of a condition red in many of the CHSLDs to being greens, We're making sure that the military does not leave any situation until it has been stabilized in the CHSLD and the Red Cross personnel are available to come in and keep supporting.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Murad Hemadi, The Logic. Line open.
Prime Minister, it's been 14 days that the government was working on.
I'm sorry, I'm not really hearing you particularly well. Can you maybe speak closer to the handset?
Prime Minister, let me try that again. It's been 42 days since you announced the government was working on changes to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, including the
I think we might have lost you.
Okay, operator, if we can take the next call, please.
Well, I can address the changes to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. We brought in place the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy in order to help businesses like here at Big Rig Brewery to bring people back on so that we could restart the economy in a safe and efficient way. We know that many businesses are down in their revenues and therefore needed help. But we want people to stay connected to their jobs, and we want the economy to get rolling again. So we saw the wage subsidy as an essential tool in helping people through a very tough time. As the economy starts to pick up, though, we don't want people to resist growth or resist hiring new people because they don't want to cross a threshold that will remove that wage subsidy. So we're very much looking at how to ensure that that wage subsidy won't be a disencouragement to grow and to hire new people. Those are the things that we're working on now. We hope to have more to say soon.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
sorry, still here?
Oh, sorry, Murad.
Mr. Hemadi, follow up.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't sure whether I was still connected. Okay, great. Thank you. Also, Prime Minister, the Federal Ethics Commissioner is investigating Canada's former ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton, for possibly violating conflict of interest rules in his role at Palantir Canada. Have you and Mr. McNaughton ever talked about Palantir or its work?
No, we have not.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. À vous.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to come back to the $14 billion. You said that you've been having bilateral conversations, and I'm wondering if your government would consider making separate agreements with provinces that want the money and that are prepared to take the money and fulfill the conditions you've set. Well, first of all the different provinces and territories are dealing with different situations. So obviously we had to have bilateral conversations in addition to our global agreement, our overall agreement with all those governments. So those bilateral conversations are continuing, and as soon as there are provinces that can reach an agreement with the government, we will be flowing the money to them as quickly as possible so that Canadians right across the country can receive the support they need. We won't wait until the last province signs to help the first one. So I think people understand that it's important to get that money out the door in order to help businesses and families and vulnerable Canadians and the municipalities as well. So there are many areas where that money is needed, and we will be doing everything we can to get it out there as quickly as possible. Follow up? Yes, so I gather there will be separate agreements. And you seem to be saying yesterday that money would end up as well in seniors' homes. Is that another condition for the use of this money? Well, within the envelope of $14 billion, we outlined a number of sectors that need help. And when we're talking about vulnerable individuals, of course, we know that seniors are extremely vulnerable. So that is money that could be used in long-term care facilities to help them. But there are provinces that do not, or that are not facing the same challenges with their seniors' homes and have already invested in them. And maybe they will want to use that money to support other vulnerable populations, whether it is Canadians who are vulnerable because they're homeless. And so within that area of vulnerability, we will be showing flexibility because that's needed for the provinces, while at the same time we want to target vulnerable Canadians right across the country.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Marie Vastel, Le Devoir. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to come back to your joint statement yesterday with the provinces about racism. Now, in that statement, there is mention made of systemic racism, and that systemic racism must be recognized in Canada. Now, do you think that some provinces refuse to include that in this statement? Well, right from the very beginning, I've talked about the need to recognize the existence of systemic racism right across the country, in every corner of this country, and in every institution. This is an important thing to do in order to move forward. Now, unanimously, all the provinces and territories signed this declaration to acknowledge that there is a problem and that we have to take action, and that's exactly what we will do. Now, there was no consensus on the use of the term systemic racism, but in terms of which provinces don't want to use that terminology, I will let you ask them that question yourself. But as far as the federal government is concerned, we recognize that systemic racism does exist and we need to combat it.
When we put out our joint statement, we demonstrated that in every province of the country, in every territory, we are committed to fighting against racism, to ensuring that people don't face discrimination based on their ethnic background or their identity, whether they're racialized or Indigenous or of any sort of background. There was not consensus on using the phrase systemic discrimination or systemic racism. I have been crystal clear that the federal government recognizes it in order to be able to better address it. But I think people have seen that it's still a strong statement that needs to be followed up by concrete actions, and I look forward to taking those actions in partnership with provinces and territories and on our own.
Mary, suivi.
Follow-up? Thank you. Now, I understand that you believe you've made a strong statement. But the fact is that systemic discrimination and racism is not mentioned in that joint statement. Now, personally, what kind of message do you think that sends when the provinces cannot agree among themselves to use that term? When they cannot agree to denounce systemic racism, are you disappointed that you can't even make a joint declaration using that term? Well, I think that highlights just how much work needs to be done across this country to address systemic racism. When there are still people and institutions right across the country that are having trouble recognizing that it exists. We will continue to work on this, and I think the value of positioning on this issue from all the premiers of the provinces and the Prime Minister is important. Now, my own comments have gone much further, but the fact is we are going to continue to work together so that we can bring people to understand that many changes are required in this country by combat racism that exists in every corner of the country. country. Christian Noël, Radio-Canada. There are people in Quebec who seem to be vulnerable because the Army is going to leave their facilities before the Red Cross comes in. Why not wait until the Red Cross is completely ready before withdrawing time? That the Army was there to transform red conditions to green conditions in 47 different long-term care homes, and they will be doing that for another 4 homes before they leave. The CAF will not leave any long-term care home before it has been stabilized and has return to green condition, so that we're not abandoning anyone. Our promise was that we would be there to support our seniors in Quebec, and we will. Now, with the Red Cross coming in, the Red Cross took part in training our military personnel before they went in April. And seniors in Quebec will be in very good hands.
The commitment we've made is that the Canadian Armed Forces will not leave any centre in Quebec that has not gone from a red condition to a green condition. We need to stabilize the situation everywhere those Canadian Armed Forces are, and nobody will pull out any military personnel until the centres in which they are fully stabilized. We're also sending in Canadian Red Cross members, 150 in the coming week, 750 more in the weeks after that, to ensure that right across the province people are getting the support they need. I can highlight that it was actually the Red Cross that participated in training up the armed forces when they first went in April. So Quebecers will be in very good hands, and we're not going to leave anyone who's in a precarious situation by pulling out the armed forces in the wrong place.
With respect to the wage subsidy, you have been promoting it over the last 3 Fridays, so apparently it's not being used enough. Now, maybe it's the level. There are some people who have 27% or 28% decline, but may not qualify, or some may fall below the threshold and not be able to access it anymore. So what will you do to help those companies? Well, this is a measure that has helped a great many people, businesses that had to completely shut down during the pandemic, and it's helped them to rehire their workers and get them back into the workplace. But we realize as well that there is a disincentive to growth. If people don't want to go beyond the threshold of 70% of their normal activity. So we don't want this to be countering additional economic activities, so we're looking at how we could change the wage subsidy in order to encourage people to continue to grow and rehire people, and we want that wage subsidy to ensure we can have a strong and safe reopening of our economy.
We recognize that this was a program designed to support people and keep them tied to their businesses at a time where the economy was shut down. As it begins to reopen, as things start up again, we don't want the wage subsidy to be a brake on growth or on rehiring, and we don't want people who get close to that 70% of business as usual mark to have to sort of slow down and not grow because if they lose that wage subsidy, they're in big trouble. That's why we're looking at modifying it to make sure that people can continue to benefit from the wage subsidy even as their businesses grow in the right way, recognizing that we are not in normal times right now, that Canadians and businesses continue to need support in order to get us through this pandemic, and as we have been from the beginning, this government will be there for them.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry, CBC. The volunteer program you announced this week, it's being run by the We charity. Can you tell us how much We is getting paid to run this program? Can you also explain why you went with them, why you didn't open this up to a competition for other groups?
We've launched an extremely ambitious program to get young people serving in their communities, young people helping out during this time of COVID, where we recognize that the usual job opportunities, the usual volunteering opportunities are simply not there. We're going to create opportunities for tens of thousands of young people right across the country to work with organizations large and small, in communities large and small, right across the country. In order to do that, we needed to have a partner to help establish the networks and to deliver that with all partners across the country. And as the public service dug into it, they came back with only one organization that was capable of networking and organizing and delivering this program on the scale that we needed it, and that was the WE program. We work with them in order to do this. We're making sure that their costs are covered, but they are not making any profits on this. Our focus is on helping kids get those opportunities that they need. We is a great organization that has done that in many ways and many times over the past years, and we're pleased to be partnering with them.
Do you know what the costs are? And also, you and your family work with the WE charity. Is there not a perception of conflict there, or at least favoritism in going with this organization?
This is one of the reasons why we leaned heavily on the public service to try and find different ways of delivering this, and they came back and demonstrated that really the WE organization is the only organization in Canada that has the scale and the ability to deliver volunteer opportunities for young people right across the country at all levels of organizations. Yes, I have worked with WE in the past because I believe strongly in promoting opportunities for young people. I've appeared in events with them, voluntarily, of course, and have done that with many great businesses and organizations across the country that I believe in, that I think we need to support. And I will continue to do so, as will my family.
I think this is an organization that has the ability to deliver a very ambitious program when it comes to helping young people, getting them involved in their community right across the country. And in fact, it is the only organization that officials believe has the ability to deliver that program. We will be delivering the program. They will not be making any profit on it. And this is an organization that has been doing great work with young people for many years. And you know just how deeply involved I am in WE. So yes, I've voluntarily supported things and been involved in their events over the years, because I believe in any effort to make young people independent and that they need an opportunity to work.
Gallagher with CTV National News. Prime Minister, hundreds of legions across the country are at risk of closing permanently because of a loss of income, and the vast majority are not eligible for federal COVID-19 funding. They're pleading for help. They've written your office twice, and they haven't received the changes they're looking for. So are you considering any type of specific funding that'll help these veteran centers, or are you willing to let these legions close?
We've been working from the beginning with organizations across the country that have faced challenges because of COVID-19. Obviously, with the wage subsidy, with the emergency business account, with the CERB, there have been many, many supports for Canadians, but there are smaller organizations, service organizations, and legions that function largely on a volunteer basis, that get their revenue by renting out their halls for smaller events that haven't been happening, that are going through a very difficult time right now. We know that, we hear that, and we are working with the Minister of Veterans Affairs and other officials to try and ensure that we are supporting these organizations that are so important, not just for veterans, but for their communities as well. We
recognize that in spite of all the help we provided to many different organizations and groups across Canada, with the wage subsidy, with the emergency response benefit,
le compte pour les affaires.
With the emergency business account, there are still organizations that rely on volunteers, have very little revenue, and often have to rent their rooms to other organizations that cannot operate in this era of COVID-19. And we are working with the Minister of Veterans Affairs and others to see how we can ensure that those organizations that are important to veterans and to our communities can continue to come through this pandemic.
On China, with high-profile legal minds writing that letter yesterday, basically disagreeing or opposing with your strategy on how to get Mr. Kovrig and Spavor released in China. How does this lack of unity at home weaken Canada's negotiating position with Beijing over this matter?
I think I've been very clear on this, that Canada continues to put the safety and security of Canadians at the very top of our priorities. We are working actively in many ways on the return of the two Michaels. And as a democracy, as a country that encourages freedom of expression, there are always going to be different perspectives on what a government should do and how a government should do it. I very much respect those eminent Canadians, even as I disagree with them. But I think it is a hallmark of a strong and free society that we can have big debates about really important issues, while at the same time a government can be absolutely unequivocal about our approach to this issue.
I think this is a sign of a healthy democracy when we're hearing different voices and different perspectives on important and delicate issues. But as a government, we have been very clear, saying that the health and safety of Canadians is our priority, and we will continue to work very hard to bring home the two Michaels who have been arbitrarily detained in China, while ensuring that any decisions we make will not endanger or cause problems for Canadians. In spite of the existence of different perspectives, even among distinguished Canadians, and the fact is that I think that it is a strength, a source of strength for our country to have different views, but our government has been unequivocal on that.
National, along the way for all of this with China, you said that your approach has been to rally international support to pressure China. What evidence, if any, do you have to tell Canadians and the families of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig that this is actually working?
Obviously, this is a long and difficult process for the families of Mr. Kovrig and Spavor. This is a frustrating situation for many Canadians, and we need to bring these Michaels home. That is why we are working extremely hard behind the scenes. We are working very clearly in public as well, rallying partners and allies around the world who continue to highlight to China their concern, not just the fact that they have arbitrarily detained two Canadians, but of course their concern that their country or their citizens could be next in this approach to putting pressure on foreign governments that China seems to have undertaken. This is a real concern upon which as a world, we need to continue to be united, and I am very pleased by the kind of support we've gotten from friends and allies and partners all around the world on this issue. There
are many countries around the world that are concerned not just about the fate of these two Canadians, but also about the precedent that could be created for their own citizens in future. So they have been clear in rejecting such an approach on the part of China and highlighting their concern with what China has done, and we want to extend our deep thanks to them for being for supporting us on this issue.
Considering a wide range of options, two of them are Magnitsky Act sanctions, also revoking student visas for Chinese students studying here. It's been more than 550 days that these two men have been detained. What are you waiting for to get tougher with China?
From the very beginning of our first mandate 5 years ago, as a government, we increased significantly our efforts around Canadians detained abroad. We have, over the past 5 years, shown significant success in a range of cases in many different countries. We have established processes, some public, some private and diplomatic behind the scenes, that maximize our chances of bringing these Canadians in difficulty home. We will continue to do the things that are necessary, but as I said, some of it is public, some of it is diplomatic and behind the scenes. I can assure Canadians that we are continuing to do everything that is maximizing our chances of bringing them home in the right way. Depuis le début de notre arrivée au pouvoir il y a 5 ans, en tant que gouvernement, on a pris extrêmement au sérieux notre responsabilité d'aider les Canadiens en difficulté à travers le monde. Et depuis 5 ans, on a eu beaucoup de succès à ramener les Canadiens en difficulté. Et ça a été une combinaison de tactiques, d'approches, certains publics, certains en privé, certains diplomatiques, certains à l'arrière-plan, qui ont réussi à ramener ces Canadiens, et on va continuer d'utiliser cette expertise pour aider les deux Michael de la bonne façon. On continue d'être optimiste qu'on va pouvoir les ramener. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you very much, everyone.